Hey everybody, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 8-game MLB DFS slate for today on Draftkings. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be here all season long trying to help you guys become better MLB DFS players, and I cover other sports as well. And speaking of other sports, I am going to be going live today on YouTube at around 1 p.m. Eastern to discuss the upcoming NASCAR DFS slate. I do this for every single race, so if you want to come in, check it out, ask me questions. Now, I would recommend watching the preview video first that I posted on Friday, just so you're not coming in blind. So, because a lot of those questions can be answered on the Friday video. So, if you just have some specific questions, come in, hang out. It's always a good time. So, if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. But if you're going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. Also, it will notify you when I go live if you happen to forget what I say here, or if you just skipped over this part of the video. And if you're going to follow me on social media, Pennell16 on Twitter, cpen16 on IG. And if you want to support my content over on Patreon, always much appreciated. We got over 300 plus people in there. You can hop into the Discord chat. You can just get access to all the extra content that I put out for each and every single sport that I have listed. So if you're interested, links in the description below. If you're not, that's fine. Let's just dive into today's slate. So pitching on this slate wasn't great, but there's three options that I think are viable. And I mean, there's a couple of other guys you could look at in tournaments, but for the most part, I think these are the three guys I am going to just kind of focus on. So we start up top with Max Scherzer. He comes in at nearly 11K with 10,300, or not 10,300, 10,800, and he presumably gets a matchup versus a soft Orioles squad, but the Orioles have had some decent games so far, and we just saw Patrick Corbin absolutely suck versus them last night. Now, fortunately, I still cashed GPPs in cash games with Corbin in my lineup, so I'm glad he was highly owned. Fortunately enough, I had some decent bats in my lineup, but I mean, I did not think I was going to be better off leaving the SP1 spot blank than I was rostering Corbin last night. I was expecting 20, 30 points from Corbin. Certainly did not happen. And the Orioles, I'll give them some respect. They have had some decent games this season, but it is Max Scherzer we're talking about, and he can overpower any lineup that he faces, and I have to think he is going to be the best option on the slate. I know he's pricey, but this is not a Coors Field slate. We're not trying to jam in some 6K bats all over our lineup, so I think he's a decently easy fit. There is some value on this slate, which makes him not difficult, so I do like Max Scherzer quite a bit here. Best pitcher on the slate, highest upside as well. And if you're looking at his numbers last year, obviously elite numbers, 35% K rate, less than a 3x FIP, limited to hard contact, less than 1 home run per 9 innings. Now his one caveat, however you say that word, too fancy for me, but he does give up power to left-handed bats. I mean, so he might give up a solo shot or two. Probably someone like Chance Siskel would take him deep in the 4th inning or whatever, something like that. You just kind of got to hope there's not other people on base. But other than that, to lefties, I mean, he's just downright elite versus pretty much everybody. And if you're looking at the Orioles splits, strikeout 23% of the time versus righties, 26% of the time versus lefties. This is like a mix of last year and this year, so obviously the numbers are going to be a little bit different this year. And the Orioles have had some decent games so far this season, so not going to call them complete garbage, but I think over the course of the season they are going to be one of the worst offenses in the AL. But I mean, I'll give them a little bit of respect here, but it's Max Scherzer, so I don't think they're going to have that great of an outing here versus old Mad Max. Then dropping down to SP2, we have Lance McCullers. He comes in at 8,700. You'd have to think he is the clear SP2 option on this slate. Now, he's a bit expensive, but he is coming off a dominant outing versus the Giants, where I believe he scored 28 fantasy points on 86 pitches, and he had a no-no up until the 7th inning. And, of course, it's right after I texted my friend, hey, Lance McCullers has a no-no heading into the 7th inning. Next at bat, gives up a hit. So I apologize for jinxing him, but he only gave up 1 hit that game. He had 0 walks and looked very sharp. And earlier this season, he did go against the Seattle Mariners, and it was his first start of the year. He scored 20 fantasy points and just looked overall pretty solid. So I think McCullers is our clear SP2 on this slate. We just saw Christian Javier drop 25 plus points versus them, and I think McCullers has similar upside, if not more. Only 3.8 runs against him in Vegas, 68% chance for the win, which is probably going to end up being the highest on the entire slate. Obviously, we have no numbers here from last season because he was injured, but overall, I think Lance McCullers is going to have a pretty good day here. If you're looking at their splits, the Mariners do strike out quite a bit versus both sides of the plate, 25%, 25%, similar numbers versus lefties and righties. So I do like Lance McCullers here quite a bit. It's pretty expensive paying up for Scherzer and McCullers, but there's enough value on this slate to get it in. It's not like it's a Coors Field slate where, like I said, we're not jamming in a bunch of 6K bats. So Don't mind the Scherzer and McCullers pairing. That's probably where most people are going to end up going in cash games. I'm recording this at 3 a.m., so things can change. But as of right now, it's looking like a Max McCullers kind of day. Now, if you want to fit in some expensive bats, we have Robbie Erlin here at 4,000 pitching for the Braves today. And he presumably gets a soft matchup versus the Marlins. But then again, the Marlins have had some decent games this season. So both the Orioles and the Marlins, teams we usually like to pick on, they've had some decent games this season and they've been ruining some good pitching options. So I'll give them a little bit of respect there. But you'd have to imagine the Marlins are going to have one of the worst offenses in the league this season. So I'll keep siding with that. And look, Erlin's not a good pitcher. If you're looking at his numbers last season, he had a 5.37 ERA, 4.14 xFIPS, quite a bit better than the 5.37 ERA. Only a 6% walk rate and a 21% strikeout rate. So not great numbers, but they're not awful either. And I don't really think he should be 4K. I think he should at least probably end up being 5K. Now the problem with him is he's only gone up to 44 pitches, I believe, so far this season. So I don't think he's going to go too deep into the game. But that honestly just might end up being a good thing for him, because if he ends up going 3 times through the order, it just might get a little bit ugly at that point. So if he can get us if he's super efficient, maybe we'll see 5 innings. I don't know how stretched out he's going to be. If he can go 60 plus pitches in this game, I think he should be able to hit value quite easily. But if he goes 3 to 4 innings here, maybe he'll be very efficient. Maybe give up a run or two, maybe no runs, maybe strike out a few. And hey, we'll take that at 4K. We're really just looking for 5 to 15 points with rostering a 4K pitcher. And we're kind of just hoping our bats go all the way off. So Erlin is in play here. He gets a soft matchup versus the Marlins. If we're looking at their splits versus lefties last season, they had a 22% K rate, but the power numbers were just not there. 78 WRC plus, 132 ISO, 288 WOBA. I know there's some new faces on that team, but for the most part, I don't think it's that great of an offense, really. So I think Robbie Erlin is fine as a 4K punt option. I mean, everyone played Spencer Howard on, was that Friday? And, I mean, he was 4K, and he did not have a great matchup versus the Mets. He scored 0.15 points, and it didn't even kill you that day because he was so chalky. So he's fine. I mean, if Scherzer and McCullers have a bad day, which I think they're going to be chalky, I mean, if Erlin just gets at least positive points, I think you'll be looking decently solid there. So I don't hate him. Not the worst pitcher in the world. I think he should probably be a little bit more expensive than 4K. It's just I don't think he's going to go too deep into the game. But if he's efficient, it should work out. But that's pretty much all I want to talk about for the pitching. Is there a couple of other options you could look at on this slate? Sure, but nothing that really gets me too excited. So I think at this point we can move on to the bats. And as always, we'll start with a catcher. And once again, I do like the Washington Nationals here. They didn't really do too much yesterday. A couple of their bats did well. Trey Turner homered, Juan Soto homered, and I think that was really it for the most part. But they're going against John Means, who I believe has not pitched in 12 days, so might be a little bit of rust there. But I like Kurt Suzuki here at 3,900 as long as he cracks the lineup. If it's Yan Gomes, you can play him too. Both have pretty good splits versus lefties, but let's just assume it's Kurt Suzuki today, 3,900. And if you're looking at his numbers versus lefties last season, he had a 343 batting average, a 12% strikeout rate, 240 ISO. Means has not been great so far to start the season, small sample size, but really he's not that great of a pitcher. If you're looking at his numbers versus righties, we're going to prefer the righties versus him. And you're 200 ISO and a 17% strikeout rate, and pretty high fly ball rate as well, 33%. So I like Kurt Suzuki here, and I think the Nationals are going to be one of the better stacks on the slate. And there's no team total out yet, but I'd have to imagine it's going to be above 5, and then the Orioles bullpen's pretty awful as well. So definitely like some of these national bats today for sure. Then dropping down to Alex Avila here at 3,400. I like a lot of the Twins today. They have one of the higher team totals on the slate currently. There's quite a few games that aren't out yet, but for the teams that are out yet, the Twins do look like they're going to have one of the higher totals on the slate at 5.42. And they're going against Brady Singer, something like that. But either way, I think the Twins are going to have a pretty solid outing here. If you're looking at Avila splits versus righties, he's got some decent pop. Now, he's a low batting average and a high strikeout kind of guy to both sides of the plate, but he's got some decent pop versus righties with a 227 ISO, and I think the Twins should be able to have their way here versus the Royals. So I think all the lefties and even the righties here are in play for the Twins. And then if you need a punt option, I could see Travis d'Arnaud being pretty popular here, especially if he's going to be batting second. He's only 2,500, and the guy's not a bad bat. Now, I prefer him versus lefties, but the numbers versus righties aren't like horrendous. And he's just a 2,500 catcher. I mean, I like him. For the most part, I like punting catcher, and if you're going to get one that's going to be hitting near the top of the order with some upside like Travis d'Arnaud, he's a pretty decent bat. He's going to certainly be playable, and as long as he is batting near the top of the order, he's going to end up being very chalky on this slate going up against Hernandez. which doesn't really scare me too much. If you're looking at his splits, give a 220 ISO to righties last season. Decently high strikeout rate at 26%, but high fly ball rate and really just not that great of a pitcher. So I think Travis d'Arnaud is perfectly fine here at that price tag. So I'm going to drop down to first base. We have Paul Goldschmidt, 4,700. I mean, I haven't been able to talk about a St. Louis Cardinal bat in quite a long time, but he's going up against a lefty in Dallas Keuchel. Now, Keuchel is not a bad pitcher by any means. He's a very high ground ball kind of guy, so I don't love stacking against him. But I don't mind Paul Goldschmidt here as a one-off because the guy just crushes left-handed pitching. He has a near 20% walk rate, 298 ISO, 148 WRC+, 567 slugging. I don't love using guys versus Keuchel, but he is worse versus righties. I mean, the strikeout rate gets cut in half. He was at 30% to lefties last season compared to 16% to righties. Power numbers pretty much the same, but higher WOBA and higher walk rate and a lower ground ball rate to righties. So I like Paul Goldschmidt here as a one-off. Definitely some home run upside there. Then dropping down to Yuli Gurriel, 4,400. Astros are going to be one of the top offenses on the slate going up against Sheffield. They have one of the highest team totals on the slate. I think it's the highest currently that's out. And honestly, it's probably going to end up being the highest, I would imagine. I don't think Washington's going to get above 5.7. They might, but I think Astros might hold the top spot here. And I just like pretty much every single Astros bat here. I like the lefties, I like the righties. And really, they should just pretty much all smash here. Now, Sheffield had a pretty good start last game out versus the Rockies. I think he struck out 7 or 8. Did very well, scored nearly 30 fantasy points. But he's struggled so far in his career, and I'm going to side with the Astros. I think they should be able to tee off, and definitely like Yuli Gurriel. He's at a fair price tag. Now, he's actually better versus righties last season compared to lefties. He had a 320 batting average to righties compared to 241 to lefties, but solid power numbers overall, pretty much the same amount of power to both sides of the plate. And he also only had a 6% strikeout rate to lefties last season, so I love getting guys that have high contact rates, so definitely like Yuli Gurriel here at 4,400. He's also had a pretty decent price tag. Then we have Howie Kendrick, 3,800. He did not make the lineup yesterday. I think he'll end up making it today, going up against the lefty and John Means. And the guy's just got great splits versus left-handed pitching. Last season, he had an out-of-this-world near 400 batting average, 376 batting average, only a 14% K rate, 240 WOBA, 239 ISO, 430 WOBA, 165 WRC+, 615 slugging. Yeah, I like Kendrick quite a bit here. John Means is a guy we should probably end up using righties against compared to lefties, and I think you can use both sides of the plate here, but for the most part, I will be targeting righties as they grade out pretty well versus John Means. Then dropping down to second base, this is a pretty weak position on this slate. Jose Altuve got bumped down to 7th in the batting order yesterday, which was surprising to see, although he has had an awful start to the season, so I guess I understand that. It's just weird seeing Altuve that down low because, I mean, for quite a while now, he's been hitting near the top of the order, so just a little bit weird to see, so I don't really love paying nearly $5K for a guy if he's going to be hitting near the bottom again, but we'll see, but not a big fan of it, so I'm probably going to end up spending down at second base. And we have Cesar Hernandez here at 4,500. So I believe Michael Fulmer is going to be opening again, but Tyler Alexander should fill in afterwards is what I'm seeing right now. Now, he's a lefty, but he's going to start out with a righty, and Hernandez has better splits versus right-handed pitching compared to lefties, but the Indians make an interesting stack on this slate. I pretty much have none of them listed here for the most part besides Hernandez because I feel they're a bit expensive, but they are playable. They have a team total of around 5, but I mean, Ramirez is expensive, Lindor is expensive, and there's just some other offenses I like more on this slate, so I'm not seeing myself really going that way. And I'm a big Indians fan, so obviously I'm not being biased here because I didn't just throw them all on here because they're in a decent spot. But they're interesting, but they're not like a top offense for me on this slate. But they do crush Detroit. I think they've won like the last 18 games versus Detroit, which is insane. So I think the Indians are certainly playable. Alexander, Fulmer don't really scare me too much. Luis Arias, I'm not sure, but 3,600. I think he's a pretty interesting option here. And I just realized Luis Garcia's salary is different because I think it's pulling up a relief pitcher. So let me fix that really quick. There we go, it's fixed. It was pulling up a relief pitcher. He's actually the bare minimum at 2K. But anyway, Arias, he's fine. I like the Twins quite a bit here. He's pretty good versus right-handed pitching. Looking at his numbers last year, he had a really low strikeout rate of 7% to right-handed pitching. 355 batting average. Not a lot of power there, but he's fine. He's going to be hitting near the bottom of the order, but he's an interesting option at a cheap price point. And then we have Luis Garcia here at 2,000, just the bare minimum. Sorry to pause really quick. I had to fix the handedness for Garcia because it was still pulling up the relief pitcher, but left-handed bat. Now, I don't love the lefties versus Means, but he's still playable just because he's a bare minimum pump play as long as he ends up making the lineup, only 2,000. Maybe he doesn't do anything versus John Means, but they'll go to the bullpen at some point. If he does literally anything at 2,000, like get us a walk and a run, get us a hit, we'll take it. I mean, he blanked us. He blanked me tonight, although he was 50% owned, and I still did just fine, even getting a 0 from Luis Garcia. So he's pretty much just a free square if you want to plug him in at a pretty weak position tonight. Second base is not a position to like, so I mean, if you just want to punt it, I totally get it. Just throwing Garcia, and then you can fit in Max Scherzer quite easily, honestly. So I think if you're playing Max Scherzer, might make sense if you just want to punt Garcia and just hope you get a couple of points there and load up at other positions. So like Garcia's a punt play. And then we're dropping into third base. We have 3 options here. I like Alex Bregman quite a bit at 5,400. Going against a lefty in Sheffield, who is just not that great of a pitcher at this point, to be honest. Could he improve in the future? Sure, but right now it's not looking that great. Now, he did have a good outing versus the Rockies last time out, but I mean, Bregman's just too good versus lefties, and I like this Astros team quite a bit on this slate. Looking at his numbers last year, he had a near 800 slugging versus lefties, a 350 batting average, 443 on base percentage, near 500 WOBA, and a 400 ISO. So you gotta like Alex Bregman quite a bit. If you got the money for him, definitely like spending up for him. As Dribble Cabrera, 4,100. I like all the Washington bats versus John Means for the most part in the Orioles bullpen. Now, if you're looking at Cabrera's numbers, he has less power to lefties compared to righties, but I mean, overall, they're really similar numbers. He's a higher batting average to lefties, but really, it's just kind of picking hairs compared to lefties and righties. Pretty much the same player to both sides of the plate. So I do like Alex Cabrera, as Dribble Cabrera, just because he's at a decent price point. I do like the national stack on this slate. I'd assume their team total is going to be above 5. I could be wrong, but I'd be shocked if it's not above 5 versus the Orioles on the road. Then Marwin Gonzalez, 3,900 if you just want a cheap Twins bat. Now, his price is getting up there. I remember when he was really low 3K range for quite some time now. I think it's been creeping up to the mid 3K range. Now we're getting close to the 4K range, which seems a bit much for Marwin, but he should be hitting near the middle of the order here versus the Royals, and I think he's a fine option. He's not a great power hitter or anything, but he's okay. I mean, it's just getting cheap Twins exposure for the most part. Dropping down to shortstop, you can also look at Luis Garcia at this position as well, but I have him listed as second right now, but he's also eligible at shortstop, but don't really think I'd want to waste my shortstop position on that pump playing Garcia. I'd rather kind of spend up a little bit. I think there's quite a few good options here. So we'll start with Trey Turner, 5,100. You could also look at Lindor. You could look at J-Ram at third as well, but wasn't like too in love with these guys. But do like Trey Turner, 5,100. He did homer last night, and if you're looking at his splits, he had more power to righties than he did versus lefties last year, but he also had a higher batting average to lefties, and the guy's obviously got some stolen base upside as well. And if you're stacking the Nats, I mean, Trey Turner's obviously going to be an elite option. He's not going to grade out like amazingly point per dollar wise, but he's still a fine option. And I do like not the Twins, the Nationals a lot versus John Means, especially the righties, which he does struggle with quite a bit more. Then Carlos Correa, 4,800. I just like all the Astros here for the most part. You can play the lefties, you can play the righties, preferably the righties, but I mean, I like every single bat here. And Carlos Correa, he's got some decent splits versus left-handed pitching last season. 308 batting average, 405 WOBA, 423 on base percentage, 160 WRC plus. Elite numbers all around, so don't mind Carlos Correa. Also really like Jorge Polanco here, 4,200. Last time I played Polanco in my cash lineup, that game got rained out. It sucked. I think he was 15% owned. Did not have a really good day that day, but I do like Polanco here, 4,200. He's cheap, going up against a righty. We know Polanco's got much better splits to righties compared to lefties, over a 300 batting average. And just really overall solid numbers, 14% K rate, near 400 on base percentage. So do like Jorge Polanco, and I like that price tag for one of the better stacks on the entire slate. And we can also look at Carter Kaboom, mainly because he has an awesome last name. I mean, Carter Kaboom, that's just a perfect baseball name to have as a last name. Kaboom. Man, he's just born to play baseball. At 3K, he's fine. If you're looking at his splits, I mean, there's really nothing there for lefties and for righties. I mean, smaller sample size, so yeah, it's going to look gross here with a 0 ISO and a 195 WOBA, but I think he's going to be fine here. So as long as he cracks the lineup, I think he's being an interesting option versus John Means as a righty, and I do like this national stack, and he's pretty cheap as well. The dropping out to the outfield, usually have a lot more options in the outfield, but there wasn't too much I liked on this slate. But we'll start with old man Nelson Cruz, who just seems to get better with age. He just homered yesterday. Did he homer twice yesterday? Can't remember, but I thought I remember seeing his name twice on the MLB home run Twitter page, but either way, the guy just crushes baseballs for a living, and it doesn't seem like he's going to stop anytime soon. He crushes lefties, he crushes righties. I mean, I prefer him versus lefties, but doesn't really matter. Still great numbers versus righties, and Twins are one of the better stacks on the slate, so certainly playable even though he's super expensive. And I'm not going to play him in cash games because of that price tag, but he's certainly viable in Twin stacks. He's just a really tough fit, to be honest, 5,600. Then we have Juan Soto, 5,400. Again, I prefer him versus righties, but I still think it's a fine option. I'd probably view him more in a tournament aspect. I played him in cash last night because he was going up against a righty who really struggles with lefty power, so it's kind of right in Juan Soto's wheelhouse. But now he's got the lefty on lefty matchup. He's worse versus lefties and means is better versus lefties, but they'll get to the bullpen at some point, and it's not like Juan Soto can't hit left-handed pitching. I mean, he's one of the best bats in the entire league, so he sort of looks Soto's way. Definitely a good ballpark for hitting, and I mean, Soto's just an awesome player, and they'll get to the bullpen eventually. So I like Juan Soto in tournaments. Bryce Harper, another guy I'd look for in tournaments. He's expensive at 5,300, but he's going up against Rick Porcello and the Phillies. I have no Phillies listed here besides Harper, but they make an interesting stack. Porcello is not that great of a pitcher, and he is someone that will struggle with left-handed bats. If you're looking at his splits last season, we'll mosey on over there. So he had a 20% K rate to righties, 17% to lefties, a higher walk rate, a 203 ISO, which is actually slightly less compared to righties with 207, but a higher WOBA, and just overall, he's a guy we can pick on. So you can look at a Philly stack today to be contrarian, but for not really any guys that stood out to me too much for cash game purposes. I mean, Didi Gregorius was 5,100, which seems a little bit overkill, but I think the Phillies are fine here. And then George Springer, 4,900, leading off versus a lefty, and for one of the best stacks in the entire slate. I mean, there's just really not much to be said here. The Astros are fantastic plays. He's leading off. He's going up against a lefty. He crushes left-handed pitching. And Sheffield is not that great of a pitcher. Struggles versus lefties and righties. So obviously Springer is going to be a pretty good play here. Max Kepler is going to be leading off versus the righty here versus the Royals. And anytime he's facing off versus a righty, or at least an average to below average righty, he's going to be one of the better plays on the slate. And I'm also a Max Kepler stan. So anytime I can list him on a slate, I will certainly do that. So he's certainly in play here. He crushes right-handed pitching, and I think he's a totally fine option. Yordan Alvarez, 4,400. I said in my video yesterday that I was hoping he would go overlooked because of the lefty-on-lefty matchup. Certainly it was not the case. I think he was 40% on my GPP and like 40% on cash as well. He's like 50% on my GPP. I play in smaller man GPPs. If you wait later in the day, what I like to do is I like to wait later in the day and they open up these smaller contests. So say you play the $100 single entry. If you wait later in the day, they usually open up smaller ones, like anywhere from 30 to like 100-ish people. So I like those ones better than the big tournaments because I don't know, I just like the ownership better in those ones. But just personal preference. I don't even know why I even started talking about that. But either way, Alvarez. Oh yeah. I thought people were going to share the lefty-on-lefty matchup. Certainly was not the case. He was one of the chalkier bats on the entire slate. Didn't really do much, but, I mean, the guy crushes lefties. He crushes righties. Sheffield, he gave up power to lefties last season. So I would not be scared of using Alvarez, and I actually think he's a fantastic play. Similar power numbers to lefties and righties last season. 342 ISO to righties. Same exact two lefties. WOBA was about the same. WRC plus was about the same. Slugging was about the same, and batting average was about the same. So it doesn't really matter if he's facing a lefty or a righty. And if you're looking at Sheffield, 241 ISO given to lefties, 16% walk rate, and I mean he should be able to crush here. I think Alvarez is one of the better plays in the entire slate. I mean if he was 5K, I still have some interest in him. So like the price tag we get with Alvarez for sure. Then Eddie Rosario, 4,200. He's literally the same exact play as Max Kepler for the most part. He's kind of like a light version of Kepler, but he also comes in at a $600 discount, and he's certainly got the similar upside. He's going to be betting cleanup. Definitely like Eddie Rosario. Then Adam Eaton, 2,900. You get the lefty-on-lefty matchup here, which I don't love. Now, Adam Eaton still has a 290 batting average versus lefties last season, which was higher compared to righties. And John Means is tougher versus lefties, but they'll go to the bullpen at some point. And look, I like the national stack quite a bit. And you can get Adam Eaton hitting inside the top 3 at below 3K. I mean, he's going to get as one of the better value bats on the slate. So I think that's pretty much it for the video, guys. If I missed one of your favorite plays on the slate, I apologize, but I have a nice laundry list of people here that I thought looked interesting at 3 a.m. the night before the slate, or I guess the morning of the slate. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Follow me on social media. I'll be going live at 1 p.m. So come in and check that out if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And I gotta go to sleep. I am so tired.